This recipe made 12 servings. The nutrition information at the bottom is for one. So obviously, if you have more than one, you would just double what that is. They are a pretty generous portion because you have that wonton cup. And so we're gonna bake those for about 5 minutes. And while that's baking, I'm gonna mix up these other ingredients. So we're using frozen spinach that has been thawed. You can either get the little 10-ounce package, or you can get one of those bigger ones and then just take out what you need. It is thawed and the liquid removed, because if we leave the liquid in, then it'll just be a little too soft and soggy.
Use fresh.
You could potentially use fresh. You would just need to really make sure it's diced pretty finely. But yes, you definitely could use fresh. And then we are using a low-fat mayonnaise. Mayonnaise is typically high in calorie. And so using a low-fat option, you still get that flavor, but reduce a good amount of that calories out and that fat.
Can you substitute with something else?
With mayonnaise, you could potentially do a little bit more of the Greek yogurt. And that would be an easy substitution. The Greek yogurt and mayonnaise are really nice complement. So you could either reduce the amount of mayonnaise and then just do Greek yogurt. There are some other like non-egg-based mayonnaises and things like that, or the vegan mayonnaises as an option as well. I haven't tried to replace it 100%. You know, that's what I love about cooking, is you just experiment, right? And it works sometimes, and then sometimes it doesn't work, and you go back to the drawing board. But the original recipe called for sour cream. Again, sour cream is a good option. We are choosing to use Greek yogurt. Greek yogurt is a really nice, nutritious option. It is a really good substitute for sour cream because it has that same tangy flavor that you get, but without all the extra fat. And then this actually has a little bit more protein. And so as we age, we need to make sure that our bones and our muscles are staying healthy. And protein is definitely a good nutrient to help keep our muscles nice and strong. So we are substituting out that Greek yogurt. And any recipe that has sour cream, it's just a 1-to-1 substitution if you are using Greek yogurt. And then we have Parmesan cheese. Parmesan cheese is a lower fat cheese than some of your other cheddar cheeses and things like that. So it is a nice option. You could use another cheese if you choose. Spinach artichoke dip traditionally has Parmesan, but you could use a cheddar or any other option that you wanted. And then we have 2 ounces of the light cream cheese. Again, same thing. You can still use this. You cut the fat and you reduce some of the calories, but you still have that same flavor, and it serves that same purpose as the more traditional one.
I have a question.
Yes.
Neuchatel, is it the same as light?
Yes, it is. It is the same. Yep. So you will have either, yes, that Neuchatel, or you will have like this brand is Philadelphia and it says 1/3 less fat. I think they do have fat-free versions of cream cheese. If you always do a fat-free version, unfortunately, you just lose some of the flavor, right? Fat is flavor. So typically we don't recommend always doing 100% fat-free because the flavor just won't be quite the same. And then obviously a staple of the spinach artichoke is artichokes. So we are just using quartered artichoke hearts here. Does anybody have one of these little things? This is the best thing ever, right? Especially if you don't like to get your knife out and to chop. This makes chopping very, very easy for you. So it calls for an 8-ounce can. This is 14 ounces, so we're not going to quite use all of it. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a few of these parts out.
What is that called?
There's different ones. There's different brands. Carol, do you want to check on those? Yeah. This one is like a Pampered Chef version, but you can find them at, I know Hy-Vee has one. So different stores have them. Just a little chopper. Yeah. Do a couple.
Chopper. I can't hear it.
Just a food chopper. But you just do a couple and then it gives it that nice version, and it's very little work. Sometimes if you have arthritis in your hands, it's difficult to hold the knife. And so it just makes it a lot easier. Do a couple little chops. It's also a great way to take out any frustration that you're having. You've had a stressful day. And then the last thing that this recipe has is garlic. And so we use fresh garlic. You can certainly use a garlic powder or the garlic granule. So whatever you have on hand. If you do use dried garlic, you'll just use less of it. So about 1 clove of garlic is about 1 teaspoon or so, or anywhere. So you always want to start a little bit less, and then you can always add a little bit more. The trick with garlic is, if anyone's had a hard time, is you just want to take something that is flat and just press, and it cracks the outside, so it makes it easier to peel the garlic. I don't know if anyone has struggled to peel garlic before, but sometimes it can be a little bit of a pain. I don't like to always mince garlic. A lot of times I just take like a little grater if I have it on hand, or you can buy a garlic press, and then you can just grate it right into the dish. Interesting fact about garlic: the larger the chunks, the less potent the garlic flakes or the garlic flavor. So like a minced garlic is going to be a lot stronger than if you have like a sliced garlic or even like a whole garlic clove. If anyone's done roasted garlic cloves before, the taste is much more mild compared to this. Did you take them out, Carl? Yeah.
Yeah.
So those wonton wrappers, you just kind of do a quick bake just to get them set. And you don't want to overcook them because they will go back into the oven after we fill them. So you can either use a cookie scoop or I thought it might be a little cool off.
No.
You can use a cookie scoop if you have one, or you can do it kind of the eyeball way and just take your spatula. Nobody likes a kitchen full of dishes, right? That's the worst part of cooking, is the cleanup. So just take a little scoop, eyeball it, and then that one kind of collapsed in a little bit. Sometimes if they're not fully set to the side of the pan, they will collapse in a bit. So you kind of want to make sure that you're not in a hurry doing a demonstration and get them to stick to the sides of those walls. And then what we do is, once we kind of get them all filled, we're just gonna pop them back in the oven to heat it up. There's nothing in here that has to be cooked to a certain temperature. We just want to make sure it's nice and warm and bubbly, and that cheese has had a time to melt. You certainly could, if you like a cold spinach dip, you certainly could serve this cold. Again, there's nothing in it that has to be necessarily cooked fully. The spinach might not be quite as nice using fresh or frozen spinach if you don't cook it, but a fresh spinach would probably work out pretty well.
So this is basically a spinach dip.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And yeah, so a spinach artichoke dip, usually it's used with chips, but this, the wonton wrapper basically replaces the chips. You still get that crunch. So we're gonna pop it back in the oven for about 10 minutes is all, and just until it's warm. You do want to take a look though what the directions say. Sometimes your stove may cook hotter or colder than what somebody else's. So these recipes are typically wrote by whoever, right? Our stoves here run a little bit hotter than stoves at my house. So taking that into consideration. So we're gonna let that cook for a bit. Any other questions on this one? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna just kind of serve them as they're ready, so you don't have to wait until it's cooled off and too cold to enjoy it. So while Carol's doing her sweet potato, we'll be passing the wonton spinach wrappers out and around.
Thank you.
The convection oven reduction is still 15 degrees.
Yeah. And yeah, so if you have a convection oven, basically the difference is it circulates the air more, and so it's gonna cook a little bit faster than a traditional oven that is more the conventional, that doesn't have that extra airflow circulation.
I read somewhere that the convection oven is basically an air fryer. Is that correct?
Some convection ovens can be used as an air fryer, but not all of them. So some of the newer models have an additional feature built in that allows you to air fry, but it's a little bit different than a convection oven. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna be making the, turkey,
Can they
sweet potato, black bean short. And, I grew up with my mother making chili that was sweet because she used pork and beans. And so my kids always wanted the chili to be sweeter. And this is a way that you can add some of that sweetness, but in a way healthier way. And so we're gonna start out by cooking some turkey. And it calls for a tablespoon of olive oil, and I am just gonna eyeball it. Because that's how I roll.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're just gonna eyeball it and see how it goes. And I did wash my hands before we started. You could use it on the stove top, right? We just did it because it's easy to do a skillet, and we want it to cook a little bit longer because we're using the sweet potatoes and we're not cooking them in advance. The recipe calls for it to be cooked in advance, but we are not going to be doing that today. So we are using ground turkey. You could make this a vegetarian dish very easily by bumping up the number of beans. If you have leftover turkey after the big feast on Thanksgiving, you could chop that up finely. If you had leftover chicken from a rotisserie chicken, you could chop that up finely. If you have ground pork, if you have ground beef, so whatever you want to use, you can substitute with this. And so we have this, this is a 93% fat. So that's why we are adding in some additional oil, because turkey is very, very lean. And if you don't add in the additional oil, you're probably going to have it be pretty dry.
What kind of oil are you using?
This is olive oil.
And in terms of the nutrition of oils, all oils are gonna have the same amount of calories and the same amount of fats. It's really just the type of fats that are gonna be a little bit different. So olive oil has a little bit healthier heart health than say a coconut oil or something like that. Coconut oil has more saturated fats. Olive oil have more unsaturated fats, so they're a little bit more heart healthy. Other heart healthy options are avocado oil, canola oil. Those, your more solid, your butters, your lards, all those things are gonna be a little bit more saturated fats, and we wanna limit those.
And even though I washed my hands before we started, I was messing with poultry. And whenever you are doing anything with poultry, you want to stop and wash your hands and make sure that they're clean again. So we are going to let that cook away. And some of the other ingredients that we're going to be adding are, of course, the sweet potatoes. And I'm not going to take a huge long time to talk to you about how to cut a sweet potato, but sweet potatoes are really hard vegetables sometimes to cut. And some of our food volunteers have talked about they'll let it microwave for a couple of minutes just to soften it up a little bit before they cut it. So if you have trouble cutting through, that may be one of the things that you want to try. We used a medium sweet potato and we left the skin on, because there's a lot of vitamins and nutrients in the skin, and we cut this pretty finely. And so no one will know that you bumped up the value of all the different proteins and things, minerals that they're getting. And so as we're cutting this, you want to pay attention to how you hold your knife. I always watch Worst Cooks in America, and she's always got them, you know, she puts a thing here because you're not supposed to do that, because you're not supposed to. You take the knife and you grab it, pinch it right here, and then you use it to cut. And while you're doing this, you want to make sure.
Yeah, if you wanna.
Move over.
There
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You want to curl your fingers under, because you want the knife to be hitting on your knuckles. And you always want to cut as flat of a surface as you can. And so this sweet potato, of course, started out round. And so I kept flat and flat and flat, because then you're not dealing with it kind of rolling back and forth.
I can't see you.
You
So
can't
move
see.
the
Oh,
screen. Sorry.
okay, that's all right.
Look this right up over here.
It
So
doesn't look like it's cooking.
again, I'm cutting this fairly fine because we are not going to be pre-cooking the sweet potato just because we don't need to. It will be done. We'll have plenty of time for that. And so I did not microwave this one, so it has some of that hardness still in it. Is everything?
I turned it on.
Oh.
I forgot to turn on. Gee, turn on your speaker.
Because I thought I turned it on to like 3:50, but who knows? We live and learn as we do this, you know. And keep breaking it up because you want it to be in fairly small pieces while you're doing this, but it typically cooks pretty quickly. So we're gonna go ahead and finish this. And so you can see I have a fairly fine dice on this. So these are all gonna cook. You want them to all be about the same size because then they're gonna cook at about the same rate.
And yeah, if you're feeling lazy and don't want to cut them super small, just know that your cooking time will be extended a bit longer, which is perfectly fine. Just depends on how big of a hurry you may be in.
And some of these are a little big. So I'm just gonna keep cutting them until they're the size that I want them to be. Have any of you used sweet potatoes in chili before and tried it?
No.
Do you all like sweet potatoes? Okay,
Well, it's chili sweet.
no, it just gives it a touch
Okay.
of sweetness. So it does not make it sweet, but it just gives it another texture.
Some people will add like a maple syrup or something to their chili to add just like it just adds a touch of sweetness, so it cuts the acidity of the tomato. And so this kind of is serves a similar purpose. That sweetness just cuts the acidity of some of that tomato.
And probably people won't even know that you have added this unless you tell them. So if you want to surprise your family who maybe are not sweet potato fans, that might be the way to do it. Sneak things in. My mother was also really good at sneaking things in. She would make, we would have an abundance of carrots in the garden. She would make what she called her pumpkin pie. Carrot pie. You would fool us all the time with that. So, but it tasted almost exactly the same, and so we didn't really mind. As long as we had dessert. Does everyone know what temperature I need to cook this to? 165, you're correct. And you all have meat thermometers at your house? And you use them religiously? You have two? Okay, good. Because for many years, we just eyeballed things. And we thought, well, this looks good and this looks done. And, you know, depending if you have somebody that really browns something in the oven or whatever, the outside may be done, but doesn't mean the inside's done. So I'm glad you're all using a meat thermometer.
We like to use digital ones, and they're instant. You don't have to guess what number it is, and then with these, you also don't ever have to calibrate them. With your dial ones, you need to check to make sure that they're calibrated, because two or 3 degrees off could, you know, mean potentially an illness or sickness, especially those that are under 5 and those that are 65 and older, and those that have compromised immune system are at a greater risk. So those couple degrees could make a big difference for somebody who has a higher risk for foodborne illness. So we like to use these digital ones.
Anybody have any thoughts on how I would check ground beef? Do I just find a big chunk and stick it in and think that then it's all done, or what would you think I should do?
I've never checked ground beef, so tell me.
You've never checked ground beef. Okay, I'm not quite ready to show you, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a mound of it.
Okay, so I figured.
You know, because that way we'll have an idea of what most of it is, and I'll check that mound in a couple different spots. to make sure that it is the right temperature.
You've got some on the back of your
Yeah, you've got
spoon.
Oh, and the-
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We are here, we don't always use the equipment that we're used to, and so thank you for telling me.
You know, typically with ground meat, a lot of people don't generally check it as much. However, if you are using ground turkey or poultry, ground chicken, you want to make sure that you check it because it does need that higher cook temperature. And it's a little bit different that it's kind of a lighter color to begin with compared to ground beef. And so it's a little harder to tell, is all that pink really gone compared to a darker ground beef that's easier to tell when that pink is all gone.
Again, what is a serving size?
So this one serves 6 servings, so about a cup, generally talking about soups. Around a cup to a cup and a half is the general serving size for a soup. If it's more of an appetizer or a side dish, you may do a half a cup, but about a cup to a cup and a half is a typical serving.
Okay, I'm thinking most of this looks pretty good, so I'm gonna mound it up in the middle. And one of the advantages of this is it's gonna keep cooking, because we're gonna put all the ingredients in, and so it will keep cooking for a while. And so in the middle of this, can you all see that? 180. So we're gonna go to a different spot and see how it is, 175, 176. So I think we're okay. We got a different couple of spots. So I'm gonna spread this out again. And then we're gonna start adding in the onions and the garlic. And even though it doesn't call for the sweet potatoes to be added now, I'm gonna go ahead and add them now, just because that will give them some extra time to be cooking. Because we're gonna let this simmer away while we do a few other things. So we add the onions, and again, those have been diced fine.
You don't brown the onions.
Yeah.
Not.
You can, so in this case, we are just combining it all together for time purposes.
Right.
But you can brown the onions and caramelize them a little bit before you add the sweet potatoes. It just helps them, yeah, cook a little bit before you add the other stuff to it.
So we're just gonna let this simmer away and it's starting to smell really good, I think. I don't know about you guys, but I'm It's kind of tricky.
I'm thinking smells good.
Especially when somebody else is doing the cooking, right? Then it's good. Okay. We're gonna add the spices in too, but I like to let them cook just for a few minutes without the spices in it. Okay, and this is got in, we used a medium onion, it was a large onion, so we just used half of it because we didn't want it to be too overpoweringly onion. And then the chopped garlic and the chopped sweet potato, we used a small one. And so it calls for a tablespoon and a half of chili powder. So. Yes. Gonna add that in. And this is not too spicy. If you are not a big fan of a lot of chili, or. And the thing about adding the chili powder, it lets it toast a little bit. And gives it a little bit of a different flavor.
You can use any type of chili powder. I mean, I know there's like an ancho chili powder. There's a like a oh, what's it called?
Chipotle.
Chipotle chili powder, yeah.
2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Gonna add that in.
Question.
If you use ground beef, would you need to drain the grease before you start doing all this?
I do, just because it has less fat, and I probably wouldn't even bother to do the tablespoon of olive oil to begin with, because you don't need it.
The other trick with ground beef that we like to say is, once you cook it, you can just kind of slide on that ground beef and just take a paper towel and blot it up so that you don't have to drain it out or maybe take it into a separate pan. So you just take a paper towel and that would just kind of absorb up that grease. And then you can control how much you want to either leave in the pan or get rid of.
The other thing about using your own spices is you can control some of the sodium. Because I'm trying to watch how much salt I eat and have. And when you look at the packets of chili seasoning in the store, a lot of them have a fair amount of salt in them. And so you want to be really careful in terms of looking at maybe using no salt beans, no salt or lower salt. I've discovered that the stewed tomatoes, some of them have a lot less sodium than some other ones. So you can see how pretty it is now that we have all those seasonings in. And it's allowing the flavors to toast a little bit. Okay, now we are going to cook that for a couple minutes. We can add a little bit of water, and probably I will do that. Just so it doesn't get too dry, because again, we have the turkey, which is a drier meat. And so you want to make sure that you keep that moisture in there as much as possible. Yeah, that's giving you a little bit of sauce at the bottom of the pan now.
Got the lid on it.
Okay. And then we need to add in a couple of cups of the vegetable broth. These cans have in 4 cups, and we're going to need 2 cups. But I'm not going to guess on that, just because if I was at home, I would guess. But since I'm doing it for you guys, I won't guess. So we'll add 2 cups of that, and then we will add in the beans and the tomatoes. Now, the thing that you want to keep in mind about beans is you can use any sort of beans. This calls for black beans. But if you're a fan of pintos, if you like red beans, whatever, use it. And if that's what you have in your cupboard, don't feel like you need to go to the store and buy another kind of bean to have available. The other thing, a lot of our food volunteers cook up batches of beans in their pressure cookers, put them in the freezer, and then again, you control the salt, you control all the stuff that you're putting in there. And it costs a lot less if you're starting with dry beans as well. And so that may be something else that you want to think about. So we're going to go ahead and add.
There's a question back there, Carol.
Oh, yeah.
I noticed that the recipe says, low sodium chicken broth, you're using the
Vegetable broth, right.
My question, obviously, either one, it's fine. I would pull out of my refrigerator chicken bone broth.
Which is fine.
Higher in protein.
It's interchangeable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I often will make my own broth. I can't buy rotisserie chicken without putting the bones in water into the pressure cooker, because then you have all that flavor from all those spices. Yeah, and just let it cook away. And it makes the best. Yeah, it does. It makes the best chicken noodle soup, makes the best every kind of soup. So we're going to go ahead and put in the broth and the beans. And again, we're using black beans for this, but use whatever makes you happy, whatever you like. And then we've got some petite diced cut tomatoes. But if you want to do stewed tomatoes, if you want to do tomatoes that have peppers in them or whatever, very interchangeable recipe.
Probably a good question.
And then a no salt added tomato. Yes,
Oh, if you use your buy canned beans, should you rinse them?
I always do. Just to get, well, it has a lot of sodium usually. And I don't like all that gel stuff with it, so I like to take it out. And so I just didn't, and we had rinsed and drained the beans here.
Even like a low salt or no salt added bean still has, yeah, that extra kind of liquid on it that, will potentially just make your dish taste a little different, or it'll give it a different color because of that liquid.
Okay.
Yes, question.
We have a pressure cooker, but I usually don't use the bean from the can, I do from dry bean, I
Yeah.
soak
Mhm.
overnight and I cook. Is there, do I need to do something different, because I notice when I do it from the dry bean, when you eat it, it's a little bit crunchier than the soft.
Probably just need to cook it a little bit longer. Yeah, so it does take a long time to cook when you make it and boil it in a pot. So, and a pressure cooker, it makes it a lot faster. But if you do just boil them on your stove, sometimes you can do like a parboil where you boil them first and then you let them sit. You bring it hot, let them sit. So you can either soak them overnight, you can parboil them, but you do need to cook them for quite a bit of a time. So maybe just try cooking them a little bit longer.
Cause I cook them like 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The other thing do you add salt to your beans? No, so adding salt could actually interfere with making them soft as well. So yeah, it's recommended to not add salt to beans when they're cooking and just add it after they're done cooking. Which some people tend to add it during the cooking process.
Might it be that the beans were kind of old too? They could
Yeah,
be.
There
They could not have
could be
been.
a variety of reasons. Different types of beans take longer to cook than others.
So does this look like chili?
I put mine in a crock pot.
In a crock pot,
Mhm.
yes,
They
cooking.
don't need to soak, just cover them with water and plug it in like 5 or 6 hours, they're done.
Yes,
Mhm.
you can cook your beans in the crock, but the only bean that is not recommended to cook in a crock pot is the red bean.
Kidney bean,
The red, yeah, the red kidney bean has a certain chemical compound in it that could be toxic to humans if consumed in larger quantities, because cooking it slowly in a crock pot doesn't deactivate that. So you can cook all like a black bean or a chickpea, you can cook in a crock pot, but your red kidney beans shouldn't be cooked in a crock pot.
With boiling is okay.
Yes, boiling them is, yes, for red ones, you need to boil them.
So voila, we have chili. So we're gonna let that cook a while. We're gonna let the sweet potatoes soften up. And are you gonna talk about the hot cocoa?
I'll talk about the hot cocoa
Okay.
while you get your next one ready and
Perfect.
set up.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Carol? Yeah, and so again, what I love about cooking is you have the people that follow the recipe as written, and then you have other people that will mix and match. And so, as Carol said, if you want to use a different bean, if you want more beans, you certainly can. Just kind of use a recipe as the foundation for it. Things like this, you don't have to follow exactly versus baking, right? If you change things in a pie or a cake, you may not get something that you desire, but stuff like this, you can experiment a little bit. So for the hot cocoa, as I mentioned, we are doing almond milk because there are quite a few people who prefer not to drink dairy or they either can't digest it. And again, sometimes as we age, our ability to digest lactose tends to deteriorate a little bit, so it affects us a little bit more. So almond milk, a coconut milk, a oat milk, a soy milk, all of those are good options. What you want to make sure you're looking for is the unsweetened version though, because the sweetened one will have additional calories and sugar, things like that. We have the unsweetened version, and we are going to sweeten it with, we have some dark chocolate. You could use the milk chocolate if you want. Dark chocolate has a little bit higher antioxidants for us. So you can eat chocolate. This is your sign to eat chocolate. But so using a dark chocolate just gives a little bit more richness too, so we don't have to use quite as much. And then we have unsweetened cocoa powder, which we mix up and mix in there. We have vanilla extract, and then some salt, and then maple syrup. You can use any type of maple syrup you have. It just adds a little bit more sweetness as well. That maple syrup adds a type of richness that I don't think you get from a white sugar, so that's why we use that. I love cinnamon in my hot cocoa, but cinnamon, have you noticed, doesn't really mix very well in liquids.
right?
Is that a pure maple syrup?
This one is the pure maple syrup, and then this one is the refined version of it. Yeah, so either one, this one is a lot more expensive than this one,
That's what
right?
I have.
Really
They go to
tastes
Go to Michigan.
Excuse me, we can't see what she's
So,
doing.
You can
Oh,
use either
really?
one. This one does come at a higher financial price than this one for sure, but they will both work equally as well. But with cinnamon, I don't like to have the little flecks of cinnamon soaking in it, so I actually just put a cinnamon stick in it while the milk is simmering and heating up, and then you get that kind of cinnamon flavor without having the cinnamon flakes floating on top. So any questions about this one? It is not going to taste exactly like your Swiss Miss hot cocoa, right? That's not the point of it, because it's really hard to replicate that that drink. But I personally find that sometimes those packets of hot cocoa are almost too sweet, and I still only use a half a packet. So this, hopefully you'll still get some of that sweetness. It's a hot drink. Carol and I were talking, and that's what she said, just even putting a marshmallow on top and letting it melt will give you a little bit more of that richness as well. So we will scoop out this and let you guys all have a little taste of this. But any questions on the hot cocoa? Yes.
Can I use agave instead?
Yes, you could use agave. You could use agave, you could use honey, you could use any type of sweetener that you would like.
We can't see what you're doing.
What is that?
We're not demoing anything. We're just talking about the recipe is all.
It's just a.
The hot cocoa is one of the recipes we aren't demoing. It's already pre-made.
Sweet, and then it's in squares. You use
What
it
was
with
the
it.
question?
Using baker's chocolate instead of chocolate chip.
Yes, you could use a baker's chocolate.
And tell me about chocolate cocoa, because there's several different kinds, and some are better for you than others, and all that stuff.
Yep, so this is just 100% cacao. So it is basically only, if you look at the ingredient list, just says cocoa. So it doesn't have anything else in it. When you are looking for the Hershey's cocoa or whatever brand you buy, it will say 100% cacao or unsweetened. So those are what you want to look for.
So what is Dutch chocolate?
Dutch chocolate, the Dutch chocolate I think is pretty similar. I think it has just one additional ingredient for what is that?
Stabilizer.
Yeah, for like a stabilizer. So this just says cocoa.
And that's
And
what we
then-
want, is 100%.
Yeah.
Dark cocoa.
It'll just be cocoa, so it's not gonna be a dark or a milk or anything like that.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so for those online, we just walked through the recipe as all. We were not demoing that, but you will have the recipe to make at home.
Okay. Y'all ready for some dessert?
Well, sure.
Okay, we're gonna let the soup continue to cook away. And we have made no bake cheesecake things for years and years and years, because my family never really liked the New York cheesecake because it was so heavy and whatever. And so this is a version, and I almost always start with light cream cheese. But this is regular cream cheese. And so what I found is it makes it a little more hearty in many ways. And so we are going to whip this up until it's kind of light and fluffy. And again, I'm sort of used to the light. I can't tell a difference between the light and this in terms of taste. When we did the nutrition analysis, we discovered it was 40 calories different between if you add the light cream cheese and the light Cool Whip. For non-dairy whipped coffee, I think that 1 serving is just whipping it up to get it to be kind of smooth. This is still a little bit cool. We got it out about an hour ago, but you want to use it to soften cream cheese. The other thing about this recipe is we're going to put vanilla wafers on the bottom and put this on top. I have used this to make peanut butter pie, where I've used graham cracker crust. Instead of putting the toppings on, I put a little peanut butter in it, and then put chocolate glaze over the top. I've used chocolate crust with that. And so this is again, you can probably tell I cook by just throwing stuff in and seeing how it goes. And so anyway, that's another thing that I've liked. And I've even frozen that pie and made little slices and then been able to get them and have treats later. So that may, if you just want one serving, I put in 4 tablespoons of powdered sugar. The original recipe called for a cup of powdered sugar, and it was just too sweet for my taste. And so cut it down to 4 tablespoons, and that seems to be just about right.
Can you substitute sugar with this? I'm trying to avoid sugar.
You could use some of the sugar substitutes. This won't be baked. And so you don't have to worry about the ones that get bitter with baking. So which would be Swerve might be a good substitute.
Yeah, like you could, the powdered sugar just gives it a little bit more of that lift, texture, like if you think about how you use powdered sugar to make a frosting, it'll just give it that lift. But you could certainly just add agave to the whipped cream to add a little bit more sweetness that way. And we want wine. I would probably go a little bit less with the agave to start, since it is a liquid. It is going to be a little different than the powdered version.
I have a question. You said there's some sugars that get bitter when they're cooked.
When they're
What would those be?
So some of the artificial sweeteners aren't heat sensitive. So when you are, like, if you think about the packets of sugar that are on restaurant tables of the artificial sweeteners, some of those aren't heat sensitive, so you wouldn't want to put those in a pie, but they have specific baking blends. Like Truvia has a baking blend, there's a stevia baking blend. So you just want to make sure that if it's in the baking aisle, it's mostly probably going to be safe for baking, but you wouldn't want to just take the a handful of the pink sugar packets and bake with them.
Splenda you can bake with.
Yeah, Splenda's one to bake with. It's mostly the ones that are for drinks, specifically the little packets that aren't good for baking.
Sugar substitutes have been under attack
Yes,
recently.
they have.
Do you have any comments about that?
Yes, so the World Health Organization, which is the big overseeing body of out of the entire world on health and nutrition, has recommended that. Can you guys all hear me okay over that?
Yeah.
That people don't use those as sugar replacements, because ultimately replacing a cookie with a sugar-free option and you're eating multiple of them isn't any healthier. So they're encouraging people to use whole foods, right? Your whole fruits and vegetables, to use your more natural sugars, things like that. Like anything, it's really about moderation. If you are finding that you're eating artificial sugars every day, just like if you're eating sugar every day, you would want to reduce it. So that's really the ultimate consensus, is they're trying to get people to just eat more healthy in general and not turn to those sweets, which are typically higher in calorie, higher in fat, and not as good for us as our fruits and vegetables.
Right side up or down?
You can do either. I'm doing round side down just because, I don't know.
All right.
And these that are broken, you can crumble them up on top or you can eat them. Whatever, makes you happy. So we're gonna go ahead and whip this up until it's pretty light and fluffy. This is not gonna be a New York cheesecake, for sure. But if you're wanting a little something sweet and you just want something with, when we added the red sugar-free strawberry, it gave it a pretty little presentation. So if you're having guests over, that can be a way for you to just give them a little something sweet. If you use the light cream cheese and the light whipped topping, it's 110 calories for one of these, which gives you a pretty good bite of sweet without a huge amount of calories. So we're gonna take the cookie spoon and you can be pretty generous with this.
I think, and Carol and I have done a couple other presentations on sugar, and I think the biggest thing is, you know, if you're going to eat it, it's really about the moderation piece. And so having something that satisfies you enough that you're not eating 5 or 6 cookies. And, you know, like anything, it's the holidays, people like to enjoy, and it's really just about reducing the amount that we're consuming. And it's never to say that you're ever going to eat sugar again. So finding a healthier option, or ones that are portioned like this. So, you know, that piece of pie, you're not cutting an extra big slice. This is a nice portion. They also do have, and again, it's a trade-off. So if you are going to reduce your sugars, or if you're diabetic, but you want to still have something sweet, they do have, I believe, a sugar-free version of the whipped topping. I forget what it's called, but I think they have a sugar-free version of that now. Again, the artificial sweeteners, it's all about moderation. If you're only having it during the holidays or on occasion versus every day.
These look much prettier because I took a lot more time. So,
What we were saying too is, if, you know, having a little piece of like a little mint or something here,
Oh,
for very green and red festive holiday desserts.
a maraschino cherry could go on the top.
As a new whipped cream that's maybe, so it's kind of very.
Yeah. It was good. Yes, there are non-dairy options available for the whipped creams.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And this one has the cookie sticking out and it's gonna bother me a little bit, but not enough that I'm gonna keep doing it. Yeah, that could be mine. So, these broken cookies, you could put them just a little bit on top if you wanted, for one option. And then we put some chocolate chips on. As I said, you can use chocolate syrup, you can use caramel syrup, you can use whatever your heart desires. Butterscotch chips could go on top of here. There's red cherry chips I've seen at the store recently for making, I think, that cherry mash candy that used to be so popular.
For the first time last night, I ate a raw cranberry that was on a party serving tray at a party. And I couldn't believe it. Oh, this works. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know people served raw cranberries.
Yeah.
So they would look great on your.
Yeah. So
And
anyway,
then right, this sweetness cut some of the tartness of the cranberry.
so hopefully you now have a little bit of a sweet snack that you can have and will enjoy it. We're going to give you samples of the chili. And are there questions while we're dishing that out? The label was back over So what about the hot chocolate? Excuse me?
Can you freeze the cheesecake pie?
I have never tried to, but I have frozen the pie when I did put the peanut butter in. So yes, I'm assuming you can.
I kind of have a silly question about onions.
Sure.
I chop a lot of onions. You know, the core, is that just throwaway?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, that's what I've always done.
Yeah, I think so too.
And we compost everything here, so that's something that you can compost.
The chili would freeze nice as well. What do you guys think about the different recipes?
Nice.
The wonton bite.
Variety.
Yeah. And then the hot cocoa, was it, what'd you guys think?
I want some more. please.
Yeah, there's plenty, there is plenty.
It's definitely not as sweet as like Swiss Miss.
Yeah.
but After you've had a few. Bits,
Thank you.
it grows on you. Yes, it
Yeah.
does.
The thing I thought was I was more able to enjoy the chocolate flavor, and that was more intense rather than the sugar flavor. Yes.
Did you put the cinnamon stick in?
We did not put the cinnamon stick in this one, no.
Thank you.
A discerning crowd over here.
I never thought of how to solve the problem of cinnamon floating on top.
That's
I'm really glad. Give a spoon.
Yes, we will get you guys spoons passed out.
Yeah.
Do you wanna grab the spoons?
Oh, yes.
So-
It's equal, 50-50 with you. There you go. Thank you. And here are you. Okay.
That one's yours.
They're not gonna- Maybe stickers. There you go. You're welcome. I'm free.
I need.
I'm sorry, I thought this was.
No, you're fine.
I'm going to make that for sure. There you go. Oh, thank you.
It's really good.
The chili?
But chili, yeah. Very delicious. Your chili is amazing. The chili is really.
Isn't it good?
Mhm.
And it has that little bit of sweetness, but it's not sweet.
No, not at all.
Right,
Really
right.
good.
So the sweet potatoes did get done.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a, like, it's just a nice flavor. It's really good.
Cool.
I assume you wash the sweet potato first.
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
yeah. And you could peel it if you wanted to. But there's a lot of vitamins in the peel, and so, like, if it's late, like in June, I might not peel, I might peel a sweet potato, you know, because it's been a while. I think the skins get drier and whatever, but yeah, they've just been pulled out of the ground, so yes.
Well, thank you all for coming. There is still plenty of hot cocoa, so yes, if you would like more hot cocoa, please help yourself to the hot cocoa. And any other questions? It is 1 o'clock, so we're not gonna kick you out or anything, but we will sign off for those that are online. So-
The chili has such a great base that I could see substituting things and you still keep that good flavor.
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
really good.